Welcome back to Side Quests IX, episode 16. Back with me, my perennial party member and contemporary and constant companion, Wes Schantz. Wes, nice to see you.
It's good to be here. How's it going?
It's going well. Though
Good.
LSU has canceled classes this Monday because of potential cold and icy conditions. I just have to mention in Fahrenheit, it's 44 degrees here right now. And so this is our
It's pretty cold.
Yeah, pretty cold. It might get down the 13 requisite degrees in order
Uh,
to actually freeze, but it will certainly be sort of cold here. And so
okay, it's like 23 degrees here. So something like-
I think the Midwest and the Southeast, I mean, the Midwest and the Northeast are substantially colder. A friend of mine in Wisconsin, I think, with wind chills around negative 28, which is
Mm,
what I recall from having gone to school in Wisconsin, and having grown up in the South, by the way. But yeah, we're getting our taste of that as well. Oh, something I wanted to mention from last time. I made this point and then just dropped it about how your voice, I know as a fact from viewers that they consider it soothing. I started talking about my voice
good.
and then just dropped it. But yes, so perhaps this time, like last time, though you don't have Daniel with you right now, this will function as some sort of ASMR, and perhaps that will get me to speak less harshly. Recently, I was actually criticized for my voice. I've gotten criticized for my many ums and uhs before. AI has
Oh,
criticized me for tangents, and but recently I was criticized for being rather loud. Um, but
oh.
that was in the context of a lecture I was actually giving to a class of students,
Mm,
where uh, one arguably has to be sort of loud. And sort of Jocko Willink, leaders have to be loud. I don't know. In any case, that goes to say I have a long way to go before I have an ASMR like voice. One other thing I have to say is that I suffered from a problem of misjudgment this for this playthrough and under expectation or what is it? Not that what is the term for undervaluing something for not
underestimating?
underestimating how much I would have to play. I thought I would just have to get through Kuja's labyrinthine desert castle, um, and then I would get on the ship.
Yeah, you
Was
think so?
It was parked right there. You said you'd gotten the airship. I was like, okay. I gained several levels because I just was not lighting or unlighting, as it were, the very last candle that I needed to in order to make the
Mm,
last crystalline staircase appear that would get me to the boss that I could pretty easily beat, though I'm not as OP as you. But then no airship.
it's
And I had
gone.
to chase it down with the blue Narcissus. And then I found myself uh in Esto, Gaza. Very interesting name of that place, seemingly
Mm,
mixture of something like Latin Spanish and Arabic
mhm.
Hebrew. Esto Gaza, like this is
Yeah,
Gaza. I don't know. Condi Petit is another interesting name in this world. And so really interesting their mixtures of names. I'd be interested in what you have to say on the name if you have something to name. Also,
mm,
we find out there are actually four continents. I incorrectly said there were three last time. There's not only a lost continent that we visited last time, there's also a forgotten continent, or rather, I might be switching those up.
right.
We went to the forgotten last time, but now there's also a lost, and that's where this
Right.
Esto Gaza is. And I think also this new, no, well, I'll actually look at the geography of the place to make sure that I don't get lost and forgotten mixed up. But there's also the Mist continent where we first start, as well as the outer continent, and then uh, a lost and forgotten continent. So we went to Estogaza, and then after that, we go to a very strange holy place. It reminds me a little bit of the Temple of the Ancients, where there's a bishop, not just a priest, and he tries to tell us how to conduct ourselves. Keep your voice down, like that recent commentator. Though it's on old work, I should note, something that's 7 years old at this point, and so it's not really current criticism. And then we go through Mount Gulug. I was really having played quite a bit at this point, was like, wow, Wes, you really, really made it very far. Um, and
Sorry.
and then after we make it, and
The
hopefully,
Mount Gulug.
I'm sorry, go on.
I was gonna say just the Mount Gulug part. It felt like a strange place to leave off, so I just powered through. Sorry
It was an
if it was a
easy,
little bit
it
too
was it was a
too
very
long.
easy dungeon, I thought. And
Yeah, short, right?
yeah, and then we fight Zorn and Thorn, and they another good
Hmm.
piece of etymology. They're called Melta Gemini, and so Melta, just like melted, Gemini, from Geminus, in Latin, or Gemini, which becomes the name of the constellation, which means the twins, um, and is in fact two twins from Greek mythology. I
Yeah.
think Castor and Pollux, two of the brothers of Helen, that are mentioned in Book 3 of the Iliad as not being present among the Achaeans, because they're already dead, sadly, or already immortalized, depending on what account one takes. But in any case, they are called twins, though strangely, Kuja says they were never twins. They're something else. I wonder if there's some form of mist monster, as it
I
were.
was thinking that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Something like the Black Mages. Turns out the Black Mages um, were deceived, though they were not really deceived. They were betrayed, but they never really believed Kuja, but they went along with him anyway. And so Vivi is very upset with seemingly them, and but also still enraged at Kuja, irrespective of their differences in power, which Amarant continues to bring up
Hmm.
wisely, that we are not in a position to beat him. And he reaffirms to us that in fact he's not in a position to deal with Garland in his conversation with Zorn and Thorn. He says, you don't get it. I need the most powerful summon, GF Eidolon, in existence, one stronger than Alexander, because Garland's power far surpasses mine.
Yes.
And so this is something that we had speculated about and hypothesized about when we were talking about our own reduction in perception of our own abilities and role in the world. But now this has been confirmed. And he's getting desperate too. Where things are starting to move fast, I would
Yeah.
say, in the narrative. And I can also sense that because now that I've had access to both the Blue Narcissus and the airship, I'm still trying to linearly go through the game, which is where I really wanted to get your insight, because as far as you played this time, I would imagine you did mostly narrative, but I also know about your penchant for side quests, so I wonder if you got into any of them or whether you intend to get into any of them. I haven't done any of the Mognet stuff, which I know is starting
Oh.
to wrap up. I know that there's another big sort of side quest coming up as well that I'm not taking part in at all. And yeah, no, I'm just wondering if
Uh,
now that you
Well,
have this freedom, what you're doing with it.
well, yeah, I think there's a lot that opens up because of the travel. Like, I think you could go to Esto Gaza at
Yes.
any time since you
Yep.
had the Blue Narcissus. And there's probably some unique dialogue that happens if you go before Kuja goes there. I didn't do that, but now that you've got the airship, like I mentioned, you can get back to Trino, that portion of the plateau where Trino is. I wanted to go because I wanted to see if there's new stuff at the auction house. Like I think the last thing I got there is the dark matter that summons Odin.
Okay.
Garnet can learn that, and I read that there's another couple of accessories. I think something that helps Zidane with stealing was the thing I particularly was interested in. So that was going to be my first um, like destination now that I can reach it again with the airship. But I then read that you can go back to Kwan's dwelling and see a
Ah,
little sequence, which I have been really looking forward to because I like vaguely remembered this and I couldn't remember how it went. And so if you haven't done it yet, we'll talk about it next time maybe. But as long as you have access to Kwan's dwelling, the airship, and you put Vivi and Quina in your party, I think that's what you need to do to trigger this little cutscene, um, which involves uh, the two best characters in the game, Vivi and Quina, and like their respective quests, kind of linking up there for a bit. Of course, in this portion of the game, we also see a major transformation on Garnet's part, right? And we get the Garnet Stone from Beatrix, which I believe is going to teach her Bahamut. So one of the stronger summons, although obviously, yeah, not strong enough for certain Kujas out there. Um, yeah, so this is also the first time that we're like required to go to Alexandria because they're kind of like looking all around for Garnet in Lindblum, and she apparently has disappeared and somehow made it all the way to Alexandria. And the hide and seek sequence involves Baku and his gang, and they're all like spreading out to look. And of course, it's Zidane who finally finds her, but only with Beatrix's help, right? And she takes his dagger once again, this time not to rename herself, but to change her appearance. And it's, I think it's a cultural thing. I don't know exactly what the meaning is in Japanese culture, but I know it's a thing from like other video games and anime and stuff that when the princess type character cuts her long hair short, it's very big deal. Like it's a huge deal. And in this case, it corresponds with her regaining her voice, regaining her confidence, it seems, and her purpose. So she commits to staying with the party, very much like Vivi did back at the Black Mage Village on the first go through of that area. And I like your point, like the connection between Condé and Esto Gaza, I think goes beyond just like weird names that seem like they probably mean something, you know, uh, because both locations have a kind of religious significance that we haven't really seen elsewhere.
Right.
Um, there was the church in Lindblum, and it's kind of like tucked away in the back
Clara.
alley. Clara has its dancers, that are, yeah, that's right, they're important too. And and I guess in this case, what I mean is it's like the entire place seems to function only as a kind of religious community. It has this kind of look of a monastery or something, and all these candles. They mentioned that there's this shimmering isle nearby, and that's where like the souls go or something. And yeah, the bishop is kind of a distasteful character. He doesn't seem particularly like a great leader or anything, but he does seem to have some information that would be good for us to, uh, you know, kind of get on his good side in order to have access to it. Um, I also was like a little confused about the way that Dr. Tot is not mentioned here. He sort of has just like fallen out of the lineup of people helping our party, but maybe because his place is sort of taken by Hilda herself, right? She also has this transformation moment where she returns to the world of you know our party, and particularly Lindblum. She has a interaction with her husband where she finally agrees to change him back to his true form. And so there's a lot of really interesting stuff in terms of plot, characters, the themes of the game. A fair amount of moving around and going different places, but each of these dungeons on its own is relatively short, I think. Although they have their tricks to them. So as long as you sort of figure out what you're supposed to do, they go pretty quick. But if not, I guess they could be kind of frustrating. So yeah, so thanks again for playing a bit further. I just really wanted to get to the the scene with Dagger, and then that also involves the airship. So that was kind of a bonus.
Well, I'm happy to get there. And to get through these interesting parts. So, like you mentioned, we have a transformation of Dagger again. So she goes from being having been mute and traumatized to now regaining her voice, finding her voice, even perhaps symbolically, and again using the dagger now to take her own autonomy, to take her own agency, and to cut her hair symbolically, at least according to what she says, symbolic of um changing her perspective. All she wanted to do was be a good princess while her mother was alive, is what she says. And so now she knows she needs to be queen. She indicates that she is not queen. There is not really a place for her to be queen of yet. And so one imagines that she's cutting her hair short in order to get to work, in order to show that she's going to help set about making this happen. Her life is not about manners and being mannered and wearing the right ornaments.
Yeah.
Her life is far more like Sid's, more like an engineering now, and but not engineering in terms of brilliant invention, but in terms of rebuilding. And
Yeah.
and and so she's going to rule. It was that she's setting the stage for the sort of ruler she's going to be, which is a hands-on, like boots on the ground, trying to build up a place. She doesn't want to be an imperial monarch. She doesn't want to be an ornamental or an overly fastidious monarch who just cares about forms and creates, new rituals. She cares about the ultimate public works, which is rebuilding
Yeah.
this place that was destroyed by this ultimate battle that took place on it between this super being Garland, who's we'll soon find out is basically like a god, and this immortal force, this created god, as it were, like AI, I guess, and also Alexander, the great Eidolon. Something she looks at right before she cuts her hair is the broken sword you mentioned that we were calling a crystal for a
Hmm.
long time.
Yeah, you can see it now that it's got a hilt. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that is a symbol of what she has gone through as a person, what her family's gone through, her own expectations for life, but also the symbol of her people. This great sword it's like the World Trade Center being hit. Except for if the whole kingdom were around the Trade Center and that were hit as well. But symbolically, the symbol of Garnet has also been, or excuse me, of Alexandria has also been fractured. It reminds me a little bit of the Return of the King and Isildur's sword.
Yeah.
And that how that's like sort of an original sin representative for man. If only you can fix this sword and get rid of this ring, then we'll be good.
That's right.
But it seems like this is all tied to the most butterfly-like transformation of Garnet yet, which is to become queen and to set the direction and modus vivendi of her rule by doing this. And in some ways, like you say, she's cutting her hair, which would seem to be a reduction in rank rather than, often when one's rank increases, one's hair becomes more ornamentalized and often
That's right.
longer. So it's either some hat, like a pope, or like in the military, um, or if one has long hair, whether male or female, additional ornaments are added to the hair, right? It's done up in some extraordinarily elaborate way, and many expensive items are added to it. But this is the opposite. And so
Yeah.
this suggests that this is not a ceremonial, she is going to have to be a builder, as it were. And so she is indicating that she doesn't have time for hair. Um,
That's right. She looks weirdly similar to Zidane
hmm,
himself, right? There's a kind
yes.
of like mirroring there, right? She's already named herself after his weapon, and now she goes further and has a kind of basically the same hairdo, like framing her face. Um, and I don't know quite what to make of that, other than I agree that if her, um, her attendants, Tot and Beatrix were telling her earlier that it's not the appropriate time to deal with him, right? And what she really needs to do is focus on portraying this role of the queen, right? She talks about how that is no longer the the goal, that she's gonna listen to people telling her to be a certain role, right? And I wonder about the um, you know the literalness of that, because she also hasn't been able to really be a reliable summoner or party member of any
Right.
kind for
No,
for
very
for a little while here.
unreliable. God, and she was really losing her focus at key moments. Luckily, I'm a little OP, not as OP as you, so I was getting a little frustrated with her.
Yeah, yeah. No, I didn't use her in the party for the Gulug mountain portion here. Um, I opted to put Queen in because she's the best. They are the best. Vivi because ditto. And then I think Steiner just because it's awesome, strong. Um, Now this caused a little bit of trouble because at the end of the dungeon, yeah, Vivi chases off to go after the black mages and Kuja, and Aiko joins the party. And she jumped in. I had removed all of her equipment before she left the party before, so this is a big problem against spells like Bio and things that like cause venom status and stuff. So she was basically just getting killed every turn. Like I'd wake her up, she'd get knocked out. I'd wake her up, she'd get knocked. But meanwhile Zidane is able to do trance and 9999 and so whatever. But it was kind of sad. Yeah, because Dagger does come in for that moment as well. She's the one who has gone through this experience of Zorn and Thorn extracting eidolons, and she does some exclamation points. She still can't talk, but Zidane is like, "No, you're not coming." So I guess if she was in your party at that point, maybe she also gets booted out. I don't know what happens mechanically there if you do include her, but of course it doesn't work on Aiko, right? Because she's not 16 yet, and they say it's going to endanger her life if they keep trying. But yeah, Kuja says whatever. But so that's I think an interesting moment of yeah, just the vulnerability of this seemingly all-powerful villain where he doesn't even really understand the forces that he's trying to trying to manipulate. Not even as well as his underlings do, evidently. And it's surprising that Zorn and Thorn would care, right, if they kill Aiko, but it seems like they do. Whereas again, he doesn't. So he's even colder than they are. Um, I yeah.
Yeah, and you can really see that he's getting a little bit desperate because things aren't working out from either direction now, right? Like he tries the feint that shows us the four party members that aren't with us, represented in a dungeon.
Oh yeah.
But that's a lie, and they all show up right at this moment, except for Aiko, whom he has to kidnap. He has to go for increasingly like nefarious, but also smaller leverage
Yeah.
over us. And then right, he needs to try and steal now the summons from her to deal with Garland, who's oppressing him now from the top. But now we're getting more annoying and are putting pressure on him from the bottom. And this scheme doesn't work, so he has to end up fleeing
Yeah.
from us. He still has his black mages. He still has the Hildegard. What is it? One,
I think it's
right?
the original. Yeah.
That's the original one because that's the one that Hilda gave to him after she ran from Cid, who has to confront his own infidelity here, and they have a moment like that. That's sort of interesting, I think, unique at least across the last several um Final Fantasies
Yeah.
to me. But right, so Kuja is getting desperate because the great writer of the play or orchestrator of the orchestra, conductor, as it were, who's been in control and has said that we're all just playing parts with in a play that perhaps he has written and is certainly conducting the music to at this moment. We're seeing him have to vamp and
Mhm.
to deal with the plan not going, not yeah, not succeeding swimmingly, not going the way that he had intended it to. And so he has to come up with a new plan. And so things are going much rougher for him. But one thing that does happen during this moment is he seems to develop a new idea. He
About
learns about
trance.
the
Yeah.
nature of trance. And it's
Yeah.
interesting, trance, because I've been thinking about it. Trance is not localized to a certain species. Vivi can trance. Zidane can trance. Steiner can trance.
Mhm.
So these are all different races, right? One is genome, one is black mage, one is human. Um, but Kuja says it doesn't come from fear from one's life. It doesn't come from a desire to protect. These are interesting. It comes from a profound emotion, like an anger, I
Mhm.
think. And so he says, and so two things about that is he says it doesn't even have to be my own. It can come from a powerful soul. And so, and it's right here. So that's strange. But he also says that if Garland is allowed to awaken these creatures, he will lose his soul.
Yes.
I didn't know what that meant exactly. And we also learned that our world is named Gaia, and there's another world named Terra, and that's where Kuja's from Hilda. And so we
Yep.
get more info on Terra, like we got info last time at Eelver about the Invincible and the airships and the Terran history. Um, and so
S-
there, yeah,
So yeah, so when Mog pops out to protect Aiko, he starts to finally like telepathically communicate with her in words that we can see at least. I guess he always has heard, the fairies, right? But it turns out that he's not a Moogle like the others. He's disguised as a Moogle, but is actually one of the most powerful Eidolons, maybe her most powerful summon. Um, and it's called Terra homing. So again, this idea of the two worlds is brought in there. Um, and she is able to summon him, and when she does, he does this amazing attack that wipes out Zorn and Thorn. And that I take it is to be what Kuja's talking about, right? He sees that as the Moogle slash summon going into trance, right? And so yeah, so even these summoned monsters can experience that. They have been what he's been trying to use all along, right? But this, like you said, it sort of ratchets that up. It's not just the use of the summon as such, but putting it in a situation where it would go into a trance is, sort of exciting to him. Um, the the Terra nature of the summon makes me wonder if all of the Eidolons are in some way like, coming from that other world, or if it's just, it just happens that this one did at some point, like, when the eye appeared and caused the devastation of their home. Is that the moment at which that that moving between the worlds is able to take place? And that's part of what um, Kuja slash Garland is doing, is of course actually making their enemies stronger every time, right? Um, they are, if not allowing the transmission of eidolons from their world to this, it's certainly the case that what they're doing is extracting, um, or rather evoking, right, the kinds of emotions that lead to these powerful, um, resistance, fighting back. And, the gameplay, of course, reinforces this because like every time you go through a tougher dungeon, you get that much stronger. You're continually progressing in that way. And Kuja's not, right? He's moving the other direction. So yeah, so Hilda has been, kind of his captive audience, and he's been explaining his whole, villainous plan to her. And so she is able to tell us basically like the next place we need to go is Ibsen's castle. It's a little unclear what they were trying to do at Gulug because we don't really see the final room or whatever. Like Vivi runs off, the black mages are there, Kuja somehow disappears, but it strikes me that the thing that he wanted from Oilver is the Gulug stone. This place is Mount Gulug, the Shimmering Islands right there. So something he's up to must involve that, must involve something to do with the souls and the capacities that souls have in his plan.
yeah.
But we just kind of like are removed from that once we find Hilda. Um, we go back and we have the sequence that leads to the airship and Garnet's transformation. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, so we have this notion of terra homing, and there might be some relationship between the Eidolons and the crystal of Gaia slash the crystal of Terra,
mm,
as well. And the resting place of Garnet did remind me quite a bit of the Maiden Sorry Eidolon wall as well.
yeah,
It looked like a very peaceful place to potentially pray. But like you say, so there's this Terra place, and so this makes me think a little bit about like Final Fantasy VII and their admixture of like saying a holy ancient people
mm,
from their own planet, but then also an extraterrestrial threat. And so here we get right. So we've seen this Aoife tree with this soul cage and this strange mist, and the mist can also create monsters. Um, and we hear that there's this other planet Terra, and we've seen this projection of it trying to mix with Gaia. And there are these things called eidolons. We also now see in this third religious place that we've seen, besides Conde Petit, besides Clara, a place with a bishop that who talks about the path of souls, and going to the Shimmering Island. So this language of the celestial language, but also heavenly language. Shimmering Island, like the White Island of Greek mythology,
Mhm.
like the Hyperborea, the far, or even Purgatory in Dante. This far off place that's just far off is where it is. Um, but then also Path of Souls, a path that could be like a star path or something. But also we find out that souls come from the stars. And so that's what I think is very interesting. So is that sort of like a mythological descriptive account of something like cosmology from a different planet, like a Terra that is much older than Gaia, that maybe souls in some way came from inhabitants from some other places? Um, but or I mean, there are obviously souls in this world as well as in Terra, and Kuja talks about his own. Do the souls come from do, the physical stars, or are the stars just like metaphysically like some high up place from some higher being, or in a Final Fantasy is that actually one? The
Yeah.
metaphysical higher space are actually where higher beings come from, like Genova or Terra. Um, unlike so far our own world.
Well,
I claim I don't work for the government.
I wonder about the like the way that this game has been referencing previous games all along too, right? Are those also like other worlds, and
Right.
has the soul sort of in a, transmigration, reincarnation kind of way, the soul of this game has moved from planet to planet, from world to world, from game to game, and yeah, of course it has to come from somewhere else, because the music, the beats of the story, even specific names and references are coming into this game in ways that players certainly are going to recognize, if not the people in the game, right? Uh, I read somewhere that the music in Mount Gulug is very closely patterned on music from a previous game, maybe even
No,
FF1.
I was noting that. Which one? Oh, I was really thinking about that. I
Yeah,
was like, oh, this music in particular, I thought was masterful in its ability to sound so casual. I actually hung out and talked to some of the characters there because of it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I thought it reminded me of like at least how I felt in certain Final Fantasy VII locations.
yeah.
Um,
I
I think
wonder
it has a
about,
nice strong bass line on it.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, the idea of the Shimmering Isle, yeah, being a
the
kind
promised
of
land.
transitional place, a boundary place. Um, it would make sense that we have to sort of step back from that for now, unless we're going to actually go to that other world and have a significant, you know, ability to travel around it and do stuff in it, which is not unheard of in Final Fantasies, right? For the world to drastically shift in the final act.
Yes.
Um, but there's definitely still some stuff that we have
Six,
to do
seven,
in
and
this
eight
world.
all did do that. You
It's kind of de rigueur actually, and so yeah, FF4, FF5, I think do in their way too.
know. Mm.
So like again, I found it a little bit clunky how we don't actually pursue Kuja and actually see him leave. In either example, right? At the Desert Palace, he's already gone. When we go out to find the airship, it's already left. And at Gulug, he just sort of, I guess, teleports away, whatever. Like, but we don't see it, and that struck me like we don't see what he's doing with the stone. Um, so there's a kind of, yeah, incompleteness to that quest. It feels like it did feel like too short of a dungeon almost, right? There's like miners' houses, and there's some notes in there from the moles. People mention the moles. We never see them, I don't think. Um,
Get a note from them if you
uh,
have trouble with the
with the
one thing that
pulley.
can give you
Yeah.
trouble. Right. Yes.
But yeah, so we bounce back out again. We move after um, after we finally have Cid's body back, right? With all that
Yes.
entails, he has made a promise that he's not going to be a skirt chaser. He's going to focus on saving the world and being a good, uh, you know, committed husband. Um, but sure enough, we are kind of set free at this point to explore, and there are going to be a lot of distractions, right? There's going to be a lot of ways in which we can drastically take the propulsion of the story off, right? For as long as we want to here, and again, I don't know quite how to feel about that because it's like, yeah, but Kuja's out there, like we have to go. Um, but again, this is just part of the nature of these games where there isn't really that ticking clock, except when you see it on the screen for those little sections of the game, right? You're allowed to wander around, explore, um, do this various side quests, and find all the hidden treasures and things from the chocobos and whatever's going on with Magnet, whatever's going on in other portions of the continents we haven't seen yet. So that's definitely what I'm gonna turn my attention to next here. Um, I I think Daguerrero is a location that's a pretty substantial town type area that you can go to now. Although how you would find that out other than just flying all over and looking at everything, I'm not sure. Um, but also, yeah, the Quan's dwelling scene, that would be a good one to start with.
It's interesting. You're making me think about the notion of transformation and its relation to the monarchs here, because every monarch on this world has been affected by Kuja. The Parmesian monarch, first and foremost, lost his kingdom,
Oh
and
yeah,
his son's out traveling around and lost his top knight, and Freya's out there. Like he's had a fragmented kingdom. Not to mention the fact that the Clayrons left them at some point because of the same race of people,
yeah,
or rats as this were. Bronn is gone from living to dead after herself going through some transformations prior to her husband dying, after meeting Kuja. Garnet, we've talked about this with her hair and now going to become regent. But also Cid, finally from Oglop to frog to man.
yeah.
And so there's another one of those fairy tale motifs, the Princess and the Frog in particular. She seems to kiss him and turn him into a man. She seems to have some sort of magic. She is some sort of mage herself, right? She's a sorceress. So how did she turn him into an Oglop? But even when he's turned into a frog, she can turn him back into a man. Um, and this has something to do with his own infidelity. So perhaps this is linked to a transformation in his character, because he also has to rebuild his kingdom, which was messed up by Atomos. So Bermesia is destroyed, needs to be rebuilt. Clara is destroyed, needs to be rebuilt. Alexandria is
Hmm.
destroyed, needs to be rebuilt. And so every one of these monarchs is going to have to transform. They were all established, enjoying times of peace. Um, and now they all have to rebuild it. It seems like if Gaia is going to thrive, and perhaps Gaia is itself as a world under threat from the likes of Garland and Kuja, it's going to take good leaders,
Yeah.
but also leaders that will have to focus on rebuilding rather than power mongering like
Hmm.
Braun.
Hmm.
It's it's almost like sort of this nasty civilizational Gaia hypothesis where like you get to this superpower that's too powerful, and then it, like the crystal, breaks apart, and then you get this time of rebuilding, almost like the eternal 10-year cycle in Spira, right? You get 10 years of good
Hmm.
time and then sin again. And it's like, but this would seem like it's going to be a good time, a time of social cohesion in the kingdoms, not a time of despair and poverty, though if this were the real world, perhaps it could be all of that, and starvation and sadness. But
Yeah.
but a time when kingdoms are going to rebuild and people are going to be filled with a sense of purpose, particularly following monarchs like Garnet, a new monarch. that will give the Alexandrians hopefully some hope um, in the pile of rubble that's currently their kingdom.
So I think it's a good point to think about what's going on with each of these places that we've kind of visited and then left and that are in ruins. Like, it seems like our party is not doing a terribly good job of cleaning up and rebuilding like those Burmesians in Lindblum mentioned, right? Like that's going on sort of behind the scenes. And that's what Baku and the crew
Yes.
of the Tantalus are up to,
That's
right?
what they say to Steiner too. They're like, we
Yeah.
don't know what you're doing. We're actually over here rebuilding. So like,
Yeah.
I really felt their sense of civic pride there. Like they're like, you don't have, and especially in this day and age when we have this sort of issue in our particular country, but like standing up to him, he's this proud knight,
Hmm.
this representative of civic authority. Alexandria, of course, not Lindblum where they are, but they're like, who are you to talk to us like this? We might have been thieves in this old world, but
Right.
here we are rebuilding this neighborhood. You want to lend a hand? And so they've transformed as well. This has allowed them to themselves to be able to stand up to somebody like Steiner, who used to be able to talk down to them callously for
Right.
being thieves who, had stolen Garnet from his kingdom, and he really held that against them for quite a long time. But now they seem to, feel enough civic pride and enough pride in themselves to stand up to a knight, who's now very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And he needs their help, right? Like nobody can find her. Um, this is a bit of a problem, right? The whole game started when she was kidnapped, right, and taken away. And so this is kind of like the reversal of that, right? She does it on her own. No one's maybe Beatrix is involved. I don't know. Again, I kind of wish this game had been able to include a little bit more um, for Steiner, for Freya, for Amaranth, right? Those kinds of side questy things that they
Yeah.
have are pretty minimal.
Yes.
In Steiner's case, it's like the sword that you get by beating the game super fast, so you almost like cut out everything else in order to pursue that. Um, but yeah, like Fratley, no one's mentioned him in a while. The Rat Prince, Puck, no one's talked about him, whatever he's up to. Um, and certainly Beatrix herself, right? Steiner had this great moment where they were, protecting the city together, and yet there isn't really that doesn't go anywhere, you know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So I feel like that's a bit of a missed opportunity, or something that just they couldn't include everything, and so that's what got left on the chopping block there. The cutting room floor, I guess, is the image I'm looking for. Um, but yeah, so I think the the dungeons that we've gone through in this portion are they're pretty memorable. Like they're pretty fun. They're cool. Some of the battles in Mount Gulug with the red dragons, the ruby dragons, whatever. They're kind of reminiscent of FF8, right? Where you fight the dragon on the mountainside. Um, they're kind of cool because they're like scripted battles. You can't avoid them. They're not random. Um, and the whole puzzle in the desert palace involving lighting the different candelabra, which lights up stained glass or changes the orientation of the shadows and stuff, creates staircases like that. That was all super interesting, but again, it's sort of like flies by, or we don't like spend much time there. We don't. It just didn't feel like there was
You're
all
right.
that much at
Super
stake
dull.
with that. Yeah. So
You're right. We get some like evil god. We get this interesting imagery of gods and angels
yeah.
and evil gods and evil angels and we're getting sort of, the profound narcissism of Kuja. He seems to really like blues and purples. He likes stained glass. He likes thinking of himself as some sort of angel. He dresses beautifully. Yeah, yeah, he has the hallmarks of very much somebody who is under the sway of a romantic perception of life, which we've talked about Final Fantasy being anti-romantic.
Mhm.
But he's not a philanderer, but he does love to talk to this fancy lady that he
That's right.
and very nice surroundings. And he does have books around him, and he's a sophisticate. He likes
Mhm.
art. He likes he likes being around fine ladies, brawn and queens even. And so he's a very suggestive character in what he is. But
Hmm. Can I say real
right,
quick,
no, yeah,
the name the name Ibsen is a name that they're giving to this place. It's not the name
yeah,
of the place.
right.
It's like a mission name, right? And it seems to be named after that character from the play
That's right.
that Zidane and Dagger were talking about on the boat that one time. And Zidane does another one of these moments when he tosses the garnet stone to her. He tells her he's sort of like um, uh, speaks as if he were the stone, right? He like throws his voice and it's saying something about like that I want to shine. That's there it is. Okay. So yeah, like you said, the imagery of the crystals and the ascribing to the crystals a kind of soul or a kind of purpose, a desire at the very least here. Um, this all seems, you know, it's interesting that we're taking that we're kind of like doing a callback to that discussion of theirs to name this castle, and we're doing another one of these little dialogues between them, where Zidane is talking about someone else, but he's really talking about himself. All right, like he's really um, the story is in some way always about him and Dagger, of course, right? Like he's always trying to get closer to her, trying to um, I don't know, bring her uh, closer to him. Seems like.
Though, of course, at Mount Gulug, we do get the chance to hit on a lady who's meeting there privately with her boyfriend, Gats, I believe is his name.
Oh
If you
yeah.
keep talking to her at the end, she'll say, "We'll talk later."
Ah.
But what I meant to say about Kuja in the Desert Palace is that might have been a good opportunity to have something like diaries laying around
mm,
that or lying around, excuse me, that might have, more insight into his plan or his fears, or like talking more about, it we could continue to develop this Terra and Gaia
yeah.
idea. Rather, we get this sort of narcissistic imagery that's about him, and it's sort of an empty place. It reminds me a little bit of a not as well done Kingdom Hearts, where, like,
Yes.
obviously Kingdom Hearts is very similar to Final Fantasy IX in that it is a compendium of that which has come before in terms of Final Fantasy and Disney, and it has to ride the line between putting that stuff together to tell a rich story and just relying on nostalgia. And insofar as it is just relying on nostalgia or just bringing back an element from the past in sort of a dead playground sort of way,
Hmm.
it it is just a locale that you go through. And so that's something I think you're noticing about the Desert Palace and these most recent places. They're beautiful, and they seem to be kind of like Ultimatia's palace or places that we've been before, but they don't tell much of a story. They
Yeah.
don't they tell a visual story. I don't know whether this is speaking to the emptiness of Kuja's existence, that it's just pure aesthetism, totally superficially just wants to exist and keep the company of fancy ladies and be cruel and talk down to people. Um, or if, right, like this is part of the problem of not continuing to develop Final Fantasy IX, but rather trying to encompass all the elements of the Final Fantasies that came before.
Hmm.
So now we have these memory places, these places that occupy space, but they don't create new narrative. They're like warts or like a cyst, and they're not a new body part or a new branch so much as just a new growth without meaning or real substance to it. And I'm not saying that they're meaningless so much as, like you said, there's an emptiness to
Yeah.
these spaces. You go through them, but but there are narrative opportunities to learn about what is actually relevant to the narrative in this time and in this space, like Terra and Gaia, which Eelver is very interesting. It is constantly full of little projections that teach us provocative things. And
Mhm.
then it's just about Kuja. And Kuja sending us here and then sending us there. And and right, it's almost like the developers started to move kind of fast, like Hayao Miyazaki does near the end of movies. Um, and where all of a sudden, yeah, these locales in this story is going to get way less developed. Um, but um, but I don't know. So I agree with what you're saying, and I also agree that there are these narrative threads like Amarant, like Freya and Fratley, and all of the Burmesians. By the way, racism against the Burmesians, no doubt. And no,
Well, so it does strike me, yeah, like nobody mentions anything about what we discovered in Mount Gulug, or sorry, not Mount Gulug, Oiver, right? We don't we don't have a discussion about that. Like that would be the stuff to take to Tot, right? Like we should be
right.
finding out from him about this and about summons and like trance. We still haven't said anything about that. What's the deal with Zidane and his powers? Nothing, right? So yeah, there's this kind of uh, silence on that front. Um, the one thing that you do find in Kuja's bedroom, I guess, question mark, there's a card
Yeah.
that's hidden on a table under a table, the naming way card, which apparently is the only card that has a function, a again a reference to FF4, I believe, where Naming Way is the character who will change the party's names, and you see him in all the inns. And then when you get to the moon, there's like all the Naming Ways are hanging out in the moon. It's like where they come from. So apparently in FF9, when you have the card, you're able to go and you can use it as the Tetramaster card, but you can also talk to a man in Daguerreo who will change the name of the party member. So you can win one from the kid at Trino during the card tournament, and then you can get this one in Kuja's room in the Desert Palace. That's the only ones in the game. Now you know.
And so if we want to continue with our theme of transformation and changing our identities, now we as the player,
Yeah,
the level of agency that Dagger has, Garnet, and she does continue to be referred to as both, depending
it's
on
so strange. Yeah. So like Kuja wants to be someone different, right? Is kind of the gist of that maybe. And he's like ashamed of this and has a kind of complex about it maybe, like for all of his flamboyant, you know, um, putting on the show kind of thing. Um, yeah, it's striking that he still wants to be the director. He wants to be, the puppet master kind of deal. And he has kind of been forced to be a character in
Mm,
the play, right? And not he's not playing the role that he envisioned for himself if
right.
he was ever going to have one. Um, he's been kind of backed into this corner. And so again, very, very Cypher to me.
Yeah, no, very much so. Very interesting. Okay, well, I know we have some time constraints today, though. I think we've also put in the usual amount of time. Is there anything that we have missed or anything that we need to hit on for this
Hmm.
time? For those who follow both this and our literary endeavors, we are meeting tomorrow to talk Tailfire.
No,
Before
the other one, Ada.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, Otta. Yes, no, we're already done with Pale Fire. That's
Ah,
back in the past. Excuse me, Otta. I it makes me think
Ada.
of fire, Ardor, but yes, no.
Similar.
Excuse the mistake. Meaning for that. But any last points? And lots of similarities between that and Final Fantasy IX. Interestingly, a world named Terra, in fact.
I know.
Um, but any last thoughts on this fairly long and yet in some ways lacking stretch of the game, my friend?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure that there's more going on here. Um, I guess my big question at this point is when are we going to circle back around to what we discovered um, in Oil Vert, and when are we going to kind of put it together that Zidane is the one who can make things turn on in these places like the Ifa tree. He's the one who can understand this language. He's, the most powerful when it comes to trance, like by by country mile. Like when is this gonna uh, become the obvious thing that we need to do and figure out? Because it's I'm keep waiting and waiting for that to happen. It keeps not happening. So
These protagonists can be thick in Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. And so he's in good company. He's in
that's
a
right.
right tradition, as it were. And we're getting pretty close to the end of this. We're gonna have to figure out, and I think we actually have a tough choice this time between Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy X.
Mm,
Um, and so I'm looking forward to, I mean, it's tough not to just go in order of numbers, especially given their temporality, but I think uh yeah, we never finished Trigger together either. So
I know. I know.
Trigger is there and Tactics. And I know you already went through Xenogears, which makes me so sad that I wasn't there to do that with you. But yeah, soon we're going to have to find a new project. You've also been listening to or following along not only with Expedition 33, but you recently mentioned Final Fantasy Remake as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is that's something that I'll chip away at each week as Prof Noctis is streaming the original on Tuesdays and then the corresponding sections in the remake on Thursdays. And so I don't always get to watch them like live. Sometimes I can watch parts of it then, but I'll put it on two times speed and watch it after he's posted it, and that I can kind of, you know, portions of it I'll slow down and just watch it and actually see it in real time. But yeah, like that's how I'm gonna experience the remake for now at least, and try to start incorporating into the immense amount of research that we did on Seven and continue to do. And yeah, Xenogears, that material's there. Like I would love it if you um, played it and listened to the recordings and stuff and told me what you think. I will eventually need to replay that game because it's one of those that is very much unfinished in a way. And I'm sure that there's stuff out there about what got cut or what was going to be in it. And
Yeah.
all of the Xenosaga stuff is in some way like a reimagining. And I just don't know that much about the bigger uh, corpus of Xeno material that's
The
there.
Xena Saga people call a masterpiece as well, and there's yet another iteration as well. There's Saga as well as Xeno something.
Blade, Xenoblade. Hmm.
And one of those is considered, at least one of those is considered masterpiece. But something that excites me is that I know you're looking to getting the Switch 2 soon, and that will have capability to support the Xenos as
Yeah.
well as Final Fantasy Remake and I believe even Rebirth. So I have Remake, I have Rebirth. I've played a good bit of Remake, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Integrate so I can get the Yuffie content,
Yeah.
and then just start over. And so maybe what we can do, and I've been trying to think about this a little bit, and I don't care if the AI gets upset at us for bird walking here. Maybe we can have some, since you're showing some interest in it, some
Mm.
contemporary conversation on one of those. Maybe we can have their own, if we're really interested in it, streams, one for E3, E33, one for Final Fantasy Remake. But that's going to create, I think, grounds for really good conversations about like Leo Strauss used to talk about ancient and modern politics and
Hmm.
how they're very
Hmm.
different. We can talk about ancient and modern video games or the current adaptations as opposed to the older ones. And we can talk about bigger questions too. And so something I've been thinking about is we post these playthroughs and they get, as many views as they do. But what we can start doing is distilling down, keep doing this, but then have, more specific sorts of videos like Final
Right.
Fantasy and X or
That's the way
Art
to do it.
and yeah.
Yeah, that's what Prof Noctis does. He'll do like the streams, the discussions, all that stuff, but then he'll also make like these shorter, more concise, more almost like thesis driven or clickbaity, as the case may be, like Final Fantasy and Buddhism, right? Final Fantasy and predestination, and that's pretty cool. I think, ultimately, if we're gonna, do a book about modernism and Final Fantasy, it makes sense that we need to start distilling down the hours and hours of, this game, 60 hours of talking about it into, a chapter of talking about it or something like that, right? Um, or a book, either way, it can't be that long.
There's lots of information already here, and so I think
Yeah.
just continuing to distill it down for everybody will make it even more appetizing, as it were, because there's already a feast. But yeah, well, okay, so good. So you're off to a play, and
Yep.
I hope that it's very good. Break a leg to all those actors, not to the people around here who are experiencing ice for the first time, perhaps in years. I know you're used
Yeah.
to it up there. You were sledding just the other week. No sledding
Yeah.
down here in Louisiana. Not yet, anyway. Well, in any case, signing the book with the Moogle and
Mm.
signing off, my friend. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Terra homing. Here we go. Take care.